Can you hear me? I'm pretty loud. You can't see when you speak because of the lights. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
go
probably
for
can
it.
speak louder. When I was growing up in Oklahoma, a small town halfway between Amarillo and Oklahoma City, a place I called a Pekin Plum Town, I learned right away there was really only one big thing that was important in life, and that was virginity. And I set myself up that was a goal to be reached, that was something of honor, that was something I was going to have no matter what I had to do to get it. So I started out. I heard things like, you know, those girls that get pregnant before high school and don't graduate from high school, they're just sluts. Nobody's going to marry a woman who is not a virgin. And I took that very, you know, it's like I couldn't think of anything worse. And my parents said, it's just a shame. They just ruin their parents' reputation and break their hearts. And what I witnessed is that as friends of mine, none of us talking about being sexually active, I wasn't, I assumed they weren't, they would just one day not be at school. And they would just be gone. Not like on 48 Hours. We all knew what it was. They were pregnant. And they just were gone. I never saw them again. And their parents moved out of town shortly afterwards. I knew that they were probably a back alley abortionist in Mexico. They were possibly in one of those homes where you give a child up for adoption. I thought about it a lot, but I was clear. That wasn't going to happen to me. I began to have some of those lustful kind of hormone feelings, but it was like brain over matter, brain over matter. I am going to not think about this. This is not going to happen. When it came time to go to college, my mother told me that it was best that I went for a year because it'd be a good experience, and that, you know, people get their MRS degrees when they go to college. Now, so they said, just go 1 year, and anytime after that you want to get married, you can. Now, what they told my brother was, you should get a PhD, you should get as much education as you can, and he did. So off to college I went, thinking that I would be in school for a year and then I would get married. And because I was going to be a virgin, I would wear the white, lacy, beautiful dress and walk down the aisle. I would make those vows to be faithful and forever. But after a year, I was still there. And what I started to witness was that, as in the sorority, we all talked about those girls that were messing around, the sluts. And no one in my sorority said anything about being sexually active, but as often would happen, I would walk into a room, or in my room, and the roommate or the roommate next door, and they'd be gone. They were pregnant, and they just slept away. So again, that wasn't going to happen to me. See, birth control pills were not available until I was about a senior in college. So the only way we had any birth control was condoms. And of course, you couldn't buy them in a small town, because as you went in the pharmacy to do so, there was the best friend of your father, who was the pharmacist, because it's a small town. As time went on, I found out that at the health center, that if you were going to get married, or were married, or had acne, you could get birth control pills. So needless to say, there was a huge outbreak of acne. But I didn't date that much in college. I was considered one of the smart girls, which always kind of concerned me, because I never I wasn't really that type of girl. But I didn't fit in any category. So what happened is I became the president of the sorority, and we had a ritual then that if you got engaged, you would tell the president, me, and there would be this ritual after everyone came in that night. Now you realize that we had curfews. We had to be in at 10 o'clock on weekdays, and on weekends we got to stay out till 12 o'clock. So what would happen on the weekdays is all the cars would be parked outside. Some people would be in the bushes, but on foot. But the cars would be steaming up, and the lights would flash on the sorority, and all these people would pile out and run to the door and quick kiss, and off they would go. And occasionally, we would know that someone was engaged. It was always a secret as to who it was. We'd wake everyone up in the sorority. 90 girls would come downstairs from 3 floors in our pajamas, and we would stand. They would turn the lights off, and we would have a candle. And as president, I would light the candle, and I would pass it. And when it got to the girl who was engaged, they blew it out. Now, everybody just went totally ballistic. They were so excited. It was like, you know, winning the lottery or something like that. And they all wanted to see the ring. So it was all about the diamond, and it was all about being able to wear that white dress, and all about a celebration that they were actually going to get married. They weren't pregnant out of wedlock. Probably some of the scene. And I began to realize in my senior year that those were clicking off really, really quickly. And I was getting ready to graduate, and what was I going to do? I didn't have anybody to get married to. Was I going to be an old maid? Well, I guess I could teach school. I could do that. But, you know, it never crossed my mind that I'd have a job or work. I mean, my dream since I was, you know, a little girl and played with all my dolls in my dollhouse, which I still have, is that I would be a wife, and I would be a mother, and I would be a homemaker. I wanted to be Betty Crocker. So all of a sudden, you know, I'm kind of in flux. But at the nick of time, he shows up. He's a great guy. He meets all the criteria. He's getting a degree in engineering. He's been handpicked by Admiral Rickover to be in the nuclear-powered submarine flotilla group. And he was nice, and he wasn't drunk all the time, and, you know, all that. So my parents liked him, and so here was my opportunity. I was getting married, and I wouldn't have to work, and I wouldn't have to be an old maid. I had the dress, and I thought, here's my dream, walking down that aisle. And that day, I had my hair done and all this makeup put on, and I didn't even look like myself. I looked like somebody else. I had the dress my mother made, and I was in the back of the church with my dad, and we started down the aisle to that da-dun-da-da, you know, big, fat, and wide, all that. And all those people started looking at me, and as much as I loved to be on stage, I did not feel very good. I was seeing all of those people with those smiles on their face and wondering, is she really a virgin? Is she not? Is she showing? Let's look at that stomach. And so we went through the ritual, got married, had the reception with the punch and the cookies. Of course, excuse me, not cookies, but the cake, you know, wedding cake deal. And of course, I was on birth control pills because I'd gone to the health center. And, you know, no one told you anything back then. You didn't know anything. I'd go in, and he would say, you have to get on this table and put your legs, take your pants off and put your legs up in these stirrups. I was like, oh my God, I'd rather die. But that's what I had to do to get birth control pills. And of course, back then, in the early days of birth controls, I made them so dang strong, they nearly killed you. You were sick all the time. And when I had my wedding pictures made and had the dress on, I'm going, I'm going to be sick. You know, everybody was running because they didn't want me to throw up on the dress. That night when we left the church, we were going to Dallas for our honeymoon, and the car was all painted with crazy colors. They had cans tied to the back, and it said, from here to maternity. And I thought, well, I'm on the birth control pills, but it's probably not going to be for long, and I wonder when the first one will come. And of course I had all the anticipation, because as the Virgin Queen, this was my big night. We drove to Dallas. I had my little outfit that I was going to wear. I'd been shopping with my mother, who bought it for me, and I picked up this one outfit. I said, well, what about this? And she said, oh, you can see right through that. Put that back on the rack. So I got something that, of course, was opaque. You could not see through it at all. It was just scoop neck, sleeveless, which was pretty wild, and came about right here. Now, I will tell you that night that the gown did come up, but it never came all the way off. I still had it on. And, you know, he was not a virgin. He had told me that, and that was acceptable because men weren't supposed to, because they were supposed to know what to do. So, anyway, we went about this, and I'm telling you, it was just a mess. I mean, where do you put your legs? Do you put them down? Do you raise them up? Do you pull and turn? You know, where's his arms go? You know, just keep the lights off. I don't want to see anything. And then, of course, you know, it was get to the point where I go, that hurts. I don't want to do this anymore. So that was a big issue, but another story. I remember thinking that night, for this I waited? You've got to be kidding. I was faithful and saved myself for this? Jeez. I was married for 9 years. It was not what I anticipated. Again, nothing was as I expected. And he was gone a lot in the military, and I was on my own, did my own thing, did everything, and then he would come home and he'd like take charge again. And it was very hard for me to release power. I was already doing that. I already knew how to do that. I could do that in 2 minutes. So there was a lot of conflict and a lot of arguments, and I really, really tried to be that little submissive homemaker and have the dinner on the table 3 times a day as I was supposed to, and not talk back and not say anything and not make any suggestions, but it was real hard. Secondly is that when we had talked briefly before we got married about having kids, and he said, I don't see any reason to have any kids, they're just kind of rugrats. And I was like, yes, because I had babysat, and I had thought, Lord, you know, I'm not going to do this, you know, this is awful. I don't see how people do this. But at the same time, I was all prepared to do it. It was like I was ready to go to slaughter because everybody said, when it's your kids, it's different. Anyway, the other issue that came up while we were married is that somehow, about 7 years into the marriage, I began to lust after every man I saw. I was in the graduate program at Texas A&M where we were, and you know, all those, what do you call those? Not the, you know, the students that teach, graduate students. Assistants, whatever they are. Oh my God, you know, I just go home and think about them. I'd sit in class and just undress them, and oh yeah, it was just pitiful. So I said, Bill, this is a problem, you know, it's getting overwhelming. I'm not able to take my brain like I did when I was 16 and make it work right. And so this went on, and he was just very much ignoring it, and finally I said, you know, this is making me crazy. I think I could go to the mental hospital, so I'm just telling you that my vows of being faithful to you are probably in question. Because the next time I have an opportunity to move in this direction, like a magnet, I am going to go. He filed for divorce. I kept the house. I did have a job. I was the director of the first abortion clinic in Austin. And I was the only non-medical person there except for a couple of counselors. And you know, I had a life then that anybody who knows me would just go, you've got to be kidding. I went to work in the morning, I took my lunch, I came home after work, I fixed my little dinner, I cleaned the house, you could have eaten off the baseboards, I, you know, washed the car, I cleaned out the car, cleaned out the trunk, the garage was spotless.
What about the graduate students?
Well, you know, I'm getting there.
Peace. Peace. Peace.
I gotta move on?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, let's see where I want to go at this point. Let's see.
The story you were going to tell, Eric.
Yes, the story I was going to tell. Anyway, my parents were coming to visit, and in the divorce we'd had 2 beds, but he took 1. So I only had 1 bed left. So I realized I had to go buy a bed so my parents have something to sleep on. I thought, well, that's a good idea. I bought a bed, and I thought I'll keep that in the master bedroom where I am, and then I'll put the other bed, it's plenty good, in the second bedroom. The delivery was supposed to come on Monday. I was home from work on Mondays, and I'd worked all day Sunday in the yard because I was mowing and trimming and all that stuff. And of course, I was about half sick, and I think it's because my reward for working in the yard was drinking one of those gallon things of Coca-Cola rather than drinking water. But the next morning I woke up and I still had things to do. It was Monday morning. I put on the same clothes. It was a pair of shorts I could barely get into and some kind of skimpy top because I wanted to get a suntan. And I was going to get everything done by noon and then get a shower and get straightened up, okay? So all of a sudden I was working in the backyard and I heard the... What's those guys? Okay. I went to the door. It was these two guys standing there, and they said, "We have your bed." Two cute little young guys, right? The bed shop truck is right there. And I said, "Well, come on in." You know, I look a mess. I haven't brushed my teeth. My hair's a mess, and I've got this get-up on, but who cares? And I got out the vacuum cleaner, and I said, "Now we need to take the old bed into here, but I want to vacuum then under the bed so we can put the new bed, and it'll be real clean." All the sheets were off of that bed, but, you know, I'm putting those in the laundry. I'm all organized. And we get it all fixed up, and they leave. And I fixed my Campbell's soup for lunch and my 2 pieces of toast with butter, and I was watching As the World Turns, which many of you will be surprised to know I watched from the 4th grade until approximately 2010 when it went off the air. I very rarely missed it. Then there was another at the door. I thought, well, who's that? Must be my neighbor or something. I went to the door. It was one of these guys that had delivered the bed. The other guy was not in the truck, and the truck was parked in my driveway. And I went, "Yes," and he said, "I think I left some of my tools at your house." I said, "Really? Well, I haven't seen them, but come in, we'll look for them." And so I'm all, in the first bedroom, I'm underneath the bed in these little skimpy shorts, and I'm on the dresser. So maybe you put them up here in the windowsill. No, well, let's go in the other room. We go in the other room, and I'm looking all around, and I'm looking under the edge of the bed. I said, "I don't know where they are." And he said, "I really didn't come back for the tools. I came back for you." Now, this was my opportunity to have sex with another man, to see another penis, and to have that experience that I was in fear and scared of so much that I thought it would never happen. And I had to make a quick decision, and I said, "Okay." We'll do it. But you have to wear a condom because I don't know where you've been or where you came from. And he said, "Okay." Well, needless to say, everything started to happen, and it was just like the other time. Arms and legs and all these things, and where am I supposed to scoot over here? How do you get up? And I was really a spectator. I never missed a trick. I was totally present and totally a spectator. I saw everything that happened in that room, and I can see it to this day in minutia. Then he hops up, and he says, "Do you mind if I take a shower?" I said, he took a shower, came in, I walked into the door, he kind of hugged me and kissed me, and off he went. I shut the door. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. It was like some kind of passage. It was some kind of freedom. I was now in a different plane than I'd ever been in before. I called all my friends, except my mother, and I told them exactly what happened. And the next day at work, I go into the abortion clinic, and I tell everybody in there exactly what happened. And that I was suddenly free. I was suddenly okay. Things were going to be okay. I just knew it. And then a day or so later, I broke out in this terrible rash. It was all over my back of my legs and my back and my arms. And of course, I worked with doctors, so I snuck in there and I said, "What is wrong with me?" I said, "I think I might have syphilis." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, it looks like you've had some piece of clothing that had some chemicals in it or something that, and it's given you that rash." And it dawned on me. It was that bed with no sheets that had all that chemical retardant so they wouldn't catch on fire. Remember, they passed that law, so put all these chemicals in so it wouldn't catch on fire. But if it does catch on fire, you'll die from all the chemicals, and you might die anyway. So anyway, at that point, I was in a different plane, and it just became so many men and so little time. And I was just happy as a pig in mud. And to this day, every time I see one of those bed shop trucks go by, I just, I don't know where he is. I'm sure he's still not driving those trucks, but I just think back to that memory and that time. And I wonder sometimes where he is and what he's doing, and if he remembers that moment in time. And if he would be surprised to know that I'm telling the story again and again after 40 years.